our 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 a.m. Israel time, new meeting time on it's Wednesday night in USA at 8 p.m. Thursday morning, 3 a.m. here in Israel. 0300 for those of you who might be listening across Europe. And maybe somebody get out of bed to listen, but hopefully they'll be listening to it later today. This is Pesach Sherbo coming to you live from Sfat, Israel, the holy city of Sfat, one of the 4 holy cities of Israel. And with me is Terry, our co-host, and Troy is here. Carla and Devorah, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. And Terry has suggested a topic for our meetings for the next few weeks. And why don't you explain, Terry, what we're going to be talking about?
Well, it kind of bounces off something that you mentioned last week that really sparked my ideas. That I think a good starting place, teaching place, is on teaching about the God of Israel. So many of us coming out of different world religions we bring with us our own mindset, our own thoughts of who God is and how God works, and we mingle that in, and I've never really even discussed in other groups I've been in about the issue of what is the real image or impression of the God of Israel from the Jewish standpoint. We are to come to you to learn about God instead of us carrying on our preconceived ideas. And so I think it's a good way is out of Israel where the Torah is going to flow, so we can start to learn about God, and then we can understand more of the 7 laws by understanding more of who God really is.
Good topic. I'm going to start a little bit off topic and then roll into topic. I heard somebody say on a program today that I happened to listen to about 5 minutes of, that people that are coming out of other religions, whether it's Islam or Christianity or anything else, they can leave their religion, but they have to be able to take the religion out of themselves. And we read about it in the book of Exodus. We read about it when the Jews leave Egypt, and they're always asking questions of Moses, of Moshe, and they said, well, heck, we haven't got anything to eat. At least when we were back in Egypt, we had food. See, that they were constantly referring back to their slavery days and saying, well, at least we had this, or let's look at it through the eyes we had when we were in Egypt. And right now we're in the middle of counting, or almost the end of counting the Omer. I think there's 9 or 10 more days till Shavuot right here in Israel. This is May 30th, 2019. And we count these 49 days from Passover to the giving of Torah is exactly what God is doing to the Israelites. He's taken them out of Egypt, but now they have to take Egypt out of the Israelites. And how does he do that? These 49 steps, each day they raise another level into towards purity to be able to accept the Torah, or receive it, not accept it, but receive it from God at Mount Sinai. The final step they do, of course, is the immersion, cleaning their bodies, cleaning their clothes, and refraining from doing much of anything for 3 days until God calls all of Israel. And he called the whole crowd there, even though it was mixed multitude was there. He calls them with the singular. He doesn't say, bring the Israelites to me, Moses. He says, bring Israel to stand before me. He uses a singular expression. He calls not only those who are of descendants of Jacob, but he calls anybody else that came out of Egypt also by the name Israel, because they left Egypt behind. Even in that mixed group, you had Pharaoh's, what do we call them, necromancers. They're his people that read the future, and his big officials, and they had commoners. And on those same 49 days, they were purifying themselves also, emptying themselves out, leaving Egypt behind, and ready to stand before the God of Israel, who is the creator of all mankind. And they said, okay, we'll do what you tell us to do. This is our problem as human beings. I don't care if you're Jew or Gentile, we still have that same problem today. We grow up in families and in countries where we get ingrained in us a way of thinking and what we think and how we relate to things. And so we have to clear those out of ourselves so that we can make way for God to fill us up with what he wants to fill us up with. You know, it's kind of like, Terry, you're actually, I think I'm going to use you as an example. Excuse me. Terry was here a few years back in Israel. When he came to Israel, he felt like he had come home, that he was where he was supposed to be. He feels that way today, actually. Is that true, Terry?
Yes.
Okay. So what happened was he was open to God's call to be part of Israel. But you can't just say, oh, I'm part of Israel. You have to learn to be part of Israel. It's like when the new immigrants came to America and they came across Ellis Island and they came into America and they kissed the ground. I'm in America. I'm an American now. And they all learned to be Americans. They changed their way of thinking from where they were before to the American way of thinking, the democratic way of thinking, whether they lived under a kingship or a dictatorship or however they lived. They changed their way of thinking. Now what's happening in America is people are sneaking across borders, southern border, northern border, however they happen to get in, and they put foot on America, on the land in America, and say, whoa, I'm an American, I'm in America. Now let's change everything to my way of thinking. And they want to enforce what they had in their other countries in America. But that's not what America is about. Just because you're standing on the ground and you decide to call yourself an American, what does America say you are? They're the ones, that's where it's important. What you think doesn't mean anything. This is the same thing with Israel. There are people today that buy t-shirts for $10, says, I am Israel. And they say, I'm a part of Israel. And they'll put a yarmulke on, or they'll cover their head, or they'll do whatever. I'm a part of Israel. Well, people cannot decide who they are. The group of people they're joining decide who they are. In other words, Israel has to recognize you as Israel. America has to recognize you as a member of the United States of America. Japan has to recognize you as part of Japan. You can't just decide what you want to be and call yourself that. As a matter of fact, that kind of thing has become so great in places across the world that there are people who call themselves American Indians that were never American Indians, or people who call themselves cats, dogs. It's the same thing. There's no difference. You want to decide who you are, decide who you are. But the reality of the situation is, it's not what you decide. If you want to call yourself a cat and all the other cats accept you and they say, yeah, you're a cat too, and I'm going to treat you like a cat, then you're a cat. Israel, you can't just declare yourself a part of Israel. You have to become a part of Israel. Now, what does it have to do with 99.9% of the world? So we got to find a starting place. What makes somebody a part of Israel? What makes somebody a human being, even to be considered a human being, Adam, a part of the human race? Because I look like a human being, because I act some of the time like a human being, and other time I act like some idiot yelling at people and road rage and being greedy and all that. Does that make you a human being? God has a definition of human being that he gave to Adam and Eve. And this is where we get the universal laws for all mankind from. God says, you want to be a human being, you want to be part of the truly be called part of the human race, this is the way you have to act. You can't act like anything else but the way I tell you to act. Now, why does God say this? Remember, in tomorrow morning when you wake up, or tonight before you go to bed, the next time you go in to use your restroom in your home, look in the mirror and say, I'm created in the image of God. You know what? What you see in the mirror has nothing to do with the image of God. It has to do with the human being, an animal, just like a cat or a dog. If I look in the mirror and say I'm a cat, but I don't see fur and I don't see little cat ears and a cat tail, I'm not a cat. If I look in the mirror and say I'm in the image of God, and I look at myself and just my hands and feet and eyes and nose and mouth, then I'm not seeing properly. Being created in the image of God has to do with the aspects of, let's call it spirituality. Who is God? Who is he? How do we know who he is? Well, God tells us who he is. And he creates us with those same attributes that he has. Exactly, Devorah. Hashem, God is consciousness and spirit, and he has attributes. That's exactly right. And he gave us those attributes. That's how we were created. There's 7. We're going to go into details of them more in classes as we go along. They're very important. But there are 7 emotions, essentially. We have 7 emotions. We're going to talk about those. But we have to use them the way he says to use them, not the way we want to use them. When we're born and we come out of the womb, we come out essentially as a human animal. We have our soul in there. It's called the nephesh, that God created. Every created breathing thing has a nephesh in it. That's your computer program. That makes you what you are. That makes a cat, a dog, a lion, an elephant, an elephant. And he created us to be those particular things. But what he gave you and me is a godly part that is connected directly to him with all the information. It also has 7 attributes, just like the animal part of us. And I know people don't like, oh, I'm not an animal. Well, but we are. It's the definition of an animal is what we're looking at. Arms, legs, mouth, procreate, eat, use the restroom. We do the same thing as every other created animal on this earth. But what they don't have, but we do, is a power that God gave us. He created us in his image, which means we are very powerful creations. We have something in us that no other creation has. That is the ability to learn from him and to decide things. Now, we think that because we think something, that it's okay. Hey, I think it, so here I am. I think I'm a cat, so I'm a cat. Or I think I'm this or that or the other thing. It could be religions. If we think it, we think it's right. But God gave us guidelines to go by. And the part of us that says, well, I think this way, so that's the way it is, and I don't care what you think, that's the animal part of us. That's our ego, our id, our I. And Joyce Myers, I used to watch some of her stuff years ago when I was learning about all the Christianity stuff. She does a little thing called What About Me? I don't know if any of you saw it, but she walks around the stage like a little robot, and she says, here's the difference between someone who's working with God and not. The one that's not working with God goes around, what about me? What about me? What about me? What about me? In a real automatic thing. And I just broke up when I saw it because that's the truth. I mean, there's a little bit of truth in everything, and she had a little bit of truth there. The minute you think, what about me? You're not thinking about anybody else in the world. You're not thinking about God. You're thinking about you. And that's, look, when someone cuts someone off on the road, you guys, remember the last time you were cut off? An anger rose up in you. You get in line at the supermarket, and the lady up in the front is talking to the cashier, and the cashier stops for a minute and exchanges a few words, and you're saying, come on, what's going on here? What's wrong? What about me? I don't have time for this stuff. That's the animal part of us.
And that's what's hard to get a hold of and control.
Absolutely hard to get a hold of and control. But this is where the God part of us kicks in. The animal has knowledge and wisdom and action, and the God part has knowledge, wisdom, and action. And you have to decide which one you're going to use. The animal part comes from the heart. You get an emotion of anger, comes from your heart. It comes up to your head, and into the animal side of your head. The animal side of your head sends it back down. It comes through your mouth, and anger comes out. When you could control the anger that comes up to your head, and then you say, hey, wait a minute, why am I angry? I shouldn't be angry. It's okay. Everything's going to be all right, because God says everything's going to be all right all the time. And a switch goes on in your head, in your mind. Then what comes out of your mouth and the actions you do are what the godly part of you. Someone takes, you know what I used to do at the supermarket? Now today everything's computerized. You just go up to one of the stands and click, and you're checked out. You don't have these long waits in line anymore. At least we don't here in Israel. You don't have to wait for the cashier. You don't have to wait for the person who's got 356 things in their basket to get done. The minute you can get that to happen here, up here, that's when you're allowing the God side of you to start controlling. Now, I was a person that had, I used to call it flash anger. All somebody had to do is bump into me in the street, and I was angry at the person. If I'd be on a dance floor with my wife and they'd bump into us twice, I was angry, and I said something or even did something sometimes. And then I realized, standing in line, I was the same way as everybody else. Oh, come on now. I got things to do. I can't waste my time being in line here. Or somebody cut me off, boy, I'd pull up beside them and rah, 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 and give them a little bit of sign language, you know.
Hey, you stepping on my toes.
Everybody's done it. But then I realized what I'm doing is wrong. I'm allowing the animal part of myself to control me. So I started doing certain things when I felt this animal part of me start to become active. When I felt the anger start to become active. When I felt my impatience start to become active. Up here, I would say, wait a minute, I don't have to go that way. I don't have to act like an animal. I can act as if I'm created in God's image, which I am. And I can treat a person nicely. When I used to stand in line and people would start getting a little upset, I'd smile and I'd say, hey, how you doing? You having a good day today? And and just change subjects and talk to people. If someone cuts me off on the road today, I mean, I still get angry if I'm behind somebody, and this is my test every day. I want to go somewhere, and the guy in front of me is driving slow or hunting for an address or taking their time. Come on now, what are you doing? Speed limit 60, you're doing 30. Why? You know, that's my test every time I get behind the car almost, but I've almost got it licked. I've been working on it for years. But you got to, I know there was a lady that used to say to me, may her memory be blessed, every day I pray for God to give me patience. I'm so impatient with everybody. And I told her every time, God's not going to make you patient with people. You have to get rid of the impatience. You have to work on it because it's already in you. He gave it to you when he put the godly part of him in you.
I know, like, you know, Hashem has given me a test like every afternoon, and I'm slow. We're slower than a turtle. getting a little better. We're supposed to be out by 6 o'clock, and I'm supposed to have 2 guys on the road by 6, loaded up, headed to Atlanta and Huntsville, Alabama, with a load of parts that they take to other hubs. But it seems like, well, I mean, I'll be honest with you, yesterday, slowest day of the year, because see, our main warehouse was closed on Monday for the holiday. So today, or yesterday, we didn't get any parts. And so all my special order stuff wasn't filled till this morning. But yesterday, I had a good 4 hours of absolutely nothing to do but fiddle. And then at 15 to 20 after 5, I get 7 orders on my table that had to go out. Most of the time I'm running end-of-day reports by 5:45 because I've got to give a copy to my drivers so they can give a copy to the hubs of what they're getting. And I'm like, really? 7 orders, at the time when I'm loading my trucks. And today it happened again. Right about 5:30, I had 4 orders sitting on my desk coming in last minute, boom, boom, boom. And I'm just like having fits, I don't know, I guess Hashem's just trying to teach me, what keeps coming to me and I keep hearing, and, it's not, things aren't coincidences, that you're not in control. So just sit back and enjoy the ride, no matter how bumpy it gets.
That's the truth. And usually if a person, we know a lady that one of her biggest peeves is somebody bumps into her or walks too close to her or maybe steps on her foot. And she's always complaining about it. You know what? It's always happening to her. And Cher said to me the other day, maybe if she didn't talk about it, it would stop happening. It wouldn't be a test anymore if she just stopped having it come out of her mouth.
That's something I've got to work on, because I kind of get aggravated at this situation. And it's just has become an aggravation of mine. It's like, on the ride home, I'm talking to my wife and I'm like, telling her, I've got to learn to just like, yeah, it just happens.
Generally,
go on.
God will keep giving us the same test till we get it right. Now, what is this called? It's called tikkun, or fixing yourself. You see, we're all created in His image. As I look at the people here in the Zoom room, each one of you is created in God's image. So I can, if I look at you in the wrong way, I'm looking at God in the wrong way. If I don't treat everybody with loving kindness, I'm not treating God with loving kindness. If I can't learn to do better at the way I treat people, people, I'm in God's image, so, I can get angry at somebody and tell them how bad they're doing and all this kind of stuff. That's not what God wants from us. God wants from each one of us to look at ourselves and go forward. Hello, Blaine. Welcome.
Hello, Dennis.
Pardon?
Dennis has also joined us.
Oh, I didn't see. Wait a minute. Let me make mine bigger. Maybe there's a reason here. Oh, there's Dennis. Okay. I had my screen too small. Okay. God, and I was reading a book. It's called Soul Surfing. And I was talking to the author today. She's a friend of Shira's. I think it's maybe available on Amazon.
Is that a brown book? Who's the writer of that?
Zlata Ernstein.
Okay, I read something else with a similar name, I think. Talking about soul surfing, about the the teaching of Judaism's teaching on reincarnation, or the soul.
There's a book like that too. But this book goes through all the 7 attributes that God has given us. Actually, there's a total of 10 altogether, but the 7 emotional ones. It's a pretty good book about the whole thing. But her first chapter is called connecting to the powerhouse. And it's talking about God. And she uses an example. If you guys ever been in a blackout, you ever lost power? What happens when you lose power? Okay, I'm not at my computer now. I'll go make a cup of coffee. Whoops, no electricity to make coffee. Okay, I'll go turn on the TV. Whoops, no TV. Gonna go talk on my phone. Whoops, it's dead. In other words, you have no power to do anything. You've got all these appliances that we live by that we can't use. Can't make a piece of toast. Your refrigerator starts defrosting and everything in it starts melting. It's just weird. What happens? They're disconnected from the powerhouse, the thing that gives them the energy and the vitality to do the things we want them to do. This is who God is. Now we have inside of us a let's call it a battery, a super power pack. Even if we're disconnected from him in our minds, we're still connected to him through how he made us because we're in his image, and we still receive power from him. Even if I'm fighting somebody, even if I'm doing bad, I'm still connected to the powerhouse. I'm still connected to God, my creator, my father. Wherever you are in the world, you're still connected to your mother and father, even if you're not even thinking about it. They gave you the gift of life. And that's why you exist, because through God, the seed came and you grew. And you're connected, and you're connected to them, and they're also connected to God. It's like in your town, there's a power station. It creates so much power that if you went to that power station and tried to charge your phone, it would blow apart if you tried to plug it in directly into the source. But there are step-down transformers to get it all the way to your house, where it funnels down the power to be able to control and use that power that's coming out of the power station. It goes in our phone, 12 volts. It goes into another appliance we use, 9 volts. It goes into our computers that are, even inside our computers, it's stepped down again to 9 volts or to 12 volts. That's what runs your computer. It's not the 110 or the 220, wherever you live in the world. It's stepped down again inside your computer. If you open up your computer, there's a thing called a power pack. It receives the electricity from the wall and steps it down, so all the parts of the computer can only use the amount they need to use to exist and to work for us. This is how God created the world. We're all connected to this powerhouse. The computer doesn't know it's connected. We're supposed to know we're connected to the creator of all things. We have to know that when he said, I'm creating you in my image, that he has given us the biggest gift he could possibly give us, and that is every human being exactly the same. We're all equal in his eyes. Doesn't make any difference, Jew or Gentile. We're all exactly the same in his eyes. There's no difference between us. What we have to do, though, since he wanted us to have free choice with what to do with our lives, to be able to think in a way that we want to think and we don't feel controlled by him. Let me give an example. If you were in a restaurant and you ordered, let's say, chicken fried steak and mashed potatoes and gravy, right? And the guy next to you orders, give me a piece of smoked ham and peas or whatever. And the minute the smoked ham got to the table, a lightning bolt came out and poof, the guy that was eating the ham got crispy critter, got punished by God. You're going to look down at your plate and say, well, wait a minute. I don't have any choice anymore. I just can't do that, or I'm going to end up like that guy. Then in that way, you understand that all free choice is taken away from you. you have to do this if you want to stay alive. Now, nobody wants to be in that position, and God doesn't want robots. So he doesn't just punish somebody for something they do in that kind of manner. At least not at the time that we do it. We have free choice to go through our whole lives any way we want. And we're going to get into another lesson about what happens in the Olam Haba, is what we call it in Hebrew, the afterlife, after this life. Because we really don't believe in death per se, and we'll get into that. Right now, we're talking about who God is. God is our powerhouse. He's the one that created everything. Without him, there's nothing. And he made us in his image, and he expects us as his children to be like him, like every father expects from every child. And he gave us the attributes, and he even tells us in Torah what his attributes are. He has 13, and what we have, the 7 emotional attributes, which he has also, which he gave to us. How we use them and decide to use them is a different story altogether, because we have free choice. And if I choose to use them improperly, he doesn't just poof, you're dead.
I mean, there's even a proper way of using hate.
Pardon? Yes.
There's even a proper way of using a negative emotion like hate.
Yes, there is.
Or even jealousy, or any of the negatives. There's a positive use for them.
Positive to them. There's people have come to think that God created good and bad, but it's not so. He tells us in Genesis that everything he created is good, and he says that we're very good. Those he created in his image, we got a double blessing. Everything is good. Now, wait a minute. What do you mean everything is good? What about the bank robbers and the murderers and the child molesters? And what about the adulterers? And what about all these other people? That's not good. What about children dying in Africa from malnutrition? That's not good. Of course it's not good, but God didn't create it. We did. You see, God created angels. And they're up there serving him. And believe it or not, we're actually in between God and the angels. We just haven't experienced it yet because we're way down here. But we also create angels. People don't realize it. We create good angels and we create bad angels, which some religions call demons. But there are creations, not God's creations. What do I mean by this? If you can make it through a day being nice to everyone and treating everyone good, you've created good angels. What does this mean? Every time you do a mitzvah to someone else, for someone else, you've created a good angel that goes from you to that person, and that person is going to pass it on to somebody else because you treated them nice, they're going to treat someone else nice. And the angel's going to continue going and going and going. If I treat somebody bad, if I get to work or get to wherever I'm going and look at somebody and say, oh, you're a piece of this and that and the other thing and da da da, you just created a bad angel. Because that person is going to turn around and the next person they meet is going to be in trouble. It's going to go from person to person to person.
I've experienced that. Like on my past job, I'd have a manager that would be hateful, and you just pass on that hatefulness.
Right. Now, the did God create that or did you? You say, did that manager create that or did God create that?
I think through our free choice, we create that.
Exactly. It doesn't say God created monsters and vampires and zombies and all that stuff. Where did it all come from? It came from man. There's a thing in Hebrew literature called a golem. let's see, wait a minute. We all have challenges here on earth to learn, to be tested, etc. I think we go by some kind of blueprint before we come here to the earth. Yeah. Now, the golem is a created creature that man creates out of what God already created. Yes. He's formed out of certain minerals and water and fashioned to shape like a man. And there's certain things, energies that man can put in it to animate that thing called a golem. But God didn't create it, we did. Now, this you can read about in Jewish history. It was created basically as a defense system for the people who couldn't defend themselves, and it would defend them against warriors or people that came to their village or something. There isn't a whole lot of them because you have to have some really special energy to do this. The point is, God didn't create it, man did. We create things out of what God has already created. We put them together in different ways. We got an automobile, we got a computer, we got a TV, we got radios. We took things that materials that God had already created, we put them together, and we created the atom bomb.
Got a question based on what you're talking about.
Sure.
We know that in Leviticus, where God warns Israel about not associating or not doing the things that sorcerers, necromancers, and witches and all that stuff. I've had people, ask me, is that stuff real? And my answer has always been in the past, just off the top of my head, is that if it wasn't real, God wouldn't warn of it.
You're exactly right.
And so by what you're saying, and I'm kind of going back with my own mind with what I've read with the warnings that God has done, is these different workings of that man does, the sorceries and stuff. Look at the men around Pharaoh, when he cast the stick and made a snake and then so man has the ability, what I'm understanding, man has the ability to tap in to that power source and use it in a negative format and actually do these things that we're not supposed to do, right?
That's exactly right, or they wouldn't be mentioned in Torah.
Right. What I'm gathering is that because we are created in the image of God, if that is the negative that God warns us not to go with, imagine what the positive would be.
You're exactly right. See, this is the thing. We play with things. We play with fire, and I mean not in a figurative sense, smashing the atom, causing explosions with the hydrogen bomb and the atom bomb. We've tapped into power that God had already put there, but who knows if we were supposed to mess with it at all. The powers are there. Look, what did Saul do? He went to the witch and asked her to bring Samuel up so he could talk to him. Two things happened. He went to someone that talks to the dead, which we're forbidden to do. Actually, we're forbidden to call up the dead, is what it is. Many of us have our parents, dreams about our parents or loved ones, where they kind of speak to us in our dreams. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You didn't call them up. You didn't use a power to call them up. They came to you, and it's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. But we can't call up somebody from the dead because it's possible, you see, because we saw it done with Samuel. So everything God warns us against is a true power that can be used in a wrong way. I mean, you can use electricity in a wrong way and somebody can get hurt.
But it's like God doesn't withhold, even though they do wrong with it, he doesn't withhold it from them.
No.
So if he's not withholding the negative, and those negatives become warnings, just imagine the good that we could do with the Torah, with the obedience to Hashem, in the positive, not in a magical, mystical way. My mind's really going with this in the image of God thing that I haven't really thought of before. Not about going out and being a white witch or something like you hear a lot of people say.
Yeah, no.
I just never have really thought about it, and I've always thought of the negative. I've never really thought of the positive and how powerful that really puts a lot of power in the 7 laws beyond what I've ever thought of.
Absolutely. Look, God says to us, here's the things I want you to do to show that you're a good human being, that you are actually representing my image on earth. You're in my image, you have to represent me, here it is. So that every time someone looks at you, they don't see something negative, they see something positive. The positive power of God, the positive way it's done.
I mean, I've just here lately when I think about these things and the 7 laws, and I look at the society around me, what I'm personally got my hands in, I'm like, it becomes overwhelming. Is what can a little person like me do? You know what I'm saying? How can I impact the world in my little bitty corner?
Well, that's a good question. Well, one person can't do anything. Well, come on now. Noah did something. Abraham did something. Esau did something. Alexander the Great did something. The emperors of Rome did something. One person can do something if you really decide to do it, good or bad. One person can do it. What we have to get focused on is life, not death. Most religions are focused on what happens after you die. We focus on life here and now. We're not focused on what's going to be after we die. Why? Because God gave us a life here, and He gave us a way to live that life, and He wants us to live it that way. He wants us to affect ourselves in such a way that it will affect someone else, so that they'll affect someone else, so that they'll affect someone else, creating the good angels and passing them on. And the next guy does the same thing, the next guy, and pretty soon everybody on earth, the whole earth is filled with the knowledge of God, like the waters cover the earth. We don't say, okay, God, do this for me and do that for me, and sit back and wait for Him to do it. We don't say, okay, I'm going to make sure that I don't do anything because I don't want to sin, because I want to be with you, and I want to have afterlife. And what you're thinking about is what's going to happen when I die? What's going to happen when I die? Each one of you have heard someone tell you, oh, you don't believe in Him anymore? You're going to go to hell. Oh, it's going to be so terrible when you die. But if you live your whole life in fear, where you're going to be when you die, you don't have a life. You're not living a life. God says, here, I want you to live your life. I want you to be joyful. I created you with life. I created you as in my image, so you can enjoy this life you're going through and move up to the next step of human existence. And this is His power. We're like Him. Is God eternal? What does it say in Genesis? When He's asked, what do I call you? He says, I am. What does that mean, I am? His name is Yud-He Vav, Yud-He Vav-He. We pronounce it Yud-K Vav-K, so we're not actually spelling His name out. Those letters form 3 words, past, present, and future in Hebrew. Those same letters, Yud-K Vav-K, or Yud-He Vav-He. They form a totality of past, present, and future. And He says, that's who I am. I'm everything. There is nothing else but me. And I created you like me, which means you're like me. You're eternal. You have powers. You can do all kinds of things. And you can think all kinds of things. But here's the way I want you to think. He doesn't say, don't think this way and that way. But he says, here's how I would like you to think. And it's all through every piece of information that we get is through it. Honor your mother and father, the very first commandment that children are taught. You honor your mother and your father. Why is it the first it's taught? Because when you honor your mother and father, you're honoring God. Because they're created in his image. You learn to honor your mother and father. You learn to honor your creator. The very first thing that kids are taught. Honor. Now, why is it so hard for us to do all of this? And I'm going to go very briefly into this. I'm not going to make it a big deal. When someone is born, every human being is born, and you come down and the nurse holds you and smacks you on the rear end or whatever, however they get you to go and start breathing. The animal soul is already in there. It's running the body. It makes the heart beat, your eyes open, your ears hear, the noises come out of your mouth. The actual godly connection doesn't happen until the 8th day for anybody. That's when the connection. Now, some sages say it's because there's certain things in a young child's body that starts working on the 7th and 8th day. You can't even sacrifice an animal if you want to give a pure animal to the Lord. You can't be younger than 8 days. There's something that happens which we're not sure about. I mean, we just know there's something happens that makes the connection complete. I guess the baby has to last those 7 days. Anything, and back in the day, there was a whole lot of infant death right after birth. Today it isn't so much. But on the 8th day comes a godly connection for every single human being. And what happens? The animal soul's there. All of a sudden, here's the God connection come in. The animal soul says, hey, wait a minute, where'd you come from? I'm the king here in this city, this body. I was here first. And you go through that battle your whole life. I was here first. It's like two kings fighting over one city. An evil king or a good king. Both of them with power. One has the power of the flesh, the other one has the power of the spiritual. Our job is not to defeat the power of the flesh. Our job is to control it. And we talked about that last week's meeting, I think, in the Bucking Bronco. And you had a good article on that on the Mooner Trek. We're not supposed to beat ourselves up. We're not supposed to live in chastity. God says, procreate. He never said go lock yourself in some room and don't whatever. He wants that godly part to influence the rest of you. But we're the ones, you and I, because we're born into this animal body with an animal part of a mind and animal emotions. We have to learn how to control it so that we are truly, truly, truly in the image of God. Just because he created us in the image of God doesn't mean we represent him. And just because we decide that we're part of something doesn't mean we're a part of it. We have to think like he does. You ever heard of think the way God, when you think the way God wants, God thinks the way you want. Well, of course, you can come into a unity with him. When you actually train yourself to be able to look at someone, not look down at someone, look at someone and say, oh yeah, they wronged me, but it's okay. Now, you don't have to have anything to do with that person. That person may repent and come back and make friends with you again and not be nasty to you again or something like that. But that's what God's waiting for us to do with him too. excuse me, we don't think about it that way, but we treat him pretty poorly sometimes. We just don't do what he says to do because we know better. Everybody that is created and living, that ever lived, ever will live, has a part in God's Torah. His Torah, his blueprint, his plan for all of eternity. Each one of you is a part of God's plan, or you wouldn't be here. There'd be no reason for you to walk this earth. Every plant's the same way. It's really hard. God told Adam and Eve, everything in the Garden of Eden you can eat. All the herbs, all the trees, all the... What happens if you eat everything, all the green stuff that's out there? You're going to die because there's poisonous stuff out there. Just because he says you can eat it, you have to learn what you can eat and what you can't eat, or you die. Your body stops working. There's hemlock out there. There's berries that carry strychnine in them. There's all kinds of stuff. I never hear anybody say, oh, God said I can eat whatever I want, so I'm going to go out there and I'm going to eat this hemlock. I'm going to eat these deadly berries. He gives us permission to do everything, but we're not supposed to do everything because it's injurious to us. The comment in the room says, the hardest thing for me is when I am sick or hurting, I get crabby. We all do. Everybody does. Everybody does. That's one of the hardest things to overcome, is not take it out on other people. Because when you're feeling bad and people can annoy you easier, and maybe you've asked somebody to do something for you and they forget or they don't do it, and then you get upset because here I am, I'm sick, I'm not feeling good, and this person didn't do what I asked them to do. That's the what about me syndrome. Now, that person, for whatever reason, didn't do something or said something they shouldn't have. Okay, well, they did it. Maybe they weren't thinking. Who knows what caused it. You have a choice now what to do with that energy that builds up in you. And if you remember, it's funny. We have a guy in the congregation. When I met him years ago, he always walked around with a frown. He's about my age. And he was always criticizing everything. And wait a minute, that's not what God wanted. We have Jews have the same kind of people that they have in every other group of people. And one day I said to him, and I guess it was on, I don't remember if it was on his birthday or something. I said to him, I'm going to give you a blessing. You'll smile at everybody and say good morning to everybody. And it'll make you feel better than them. This was like 3-4 years ago. Today I was standing in front of our Torah For The Nations Center talking to somebody else, and this guy must have seen me not smiling. So he walks up to me. For some reason, I didn't have a smile on my face. I was having a discussion with somebody. He says, if you smile at people, they'll actually smile back at you. I said, gee, I've heard that before. You influence somebody's life, and then they'll come back and give it out to you and to other people, and they'll think it was their idea. And that's okay. That's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I've got a guy at work he's really negative and down about a lot of things. Always has that frown on his face. And the other day, y'all may have seen a post that I shared on Facebook. I don't know, it's really, it's one of those things later I found out, it came from Joyce Meyer. So like you said, truth kind of comes from different places. But I love the saying because I went up to him and actually used it at work, and he just kind of grinned at me. And I looked at him, I said, just because somebody gave you a cactus doesn't mean you have to sit on it.
There you go. Water a cactus right, it's going to flower.
Yeah.
Listen, Blaine and Carla and Deborah. Carla is in the chat room, so she makes comments and stuff. There's a chat room connected to that window you're in. Down, if you run your mouse down, you'll see almost all the way over to the right, it'll say chat. If you click on that, it opens up a little column and you can ask questions or You can wave your hand at me and I'll shut up and you can talk. Because we like the teachings to be kind of back and forth. We're kind of running out of time for today. I don't like them to go over an hour, but this is number one in who God is. Because we have to know who we are so we know who God is. And we have to know who God is so we know who we are. Because we're a one together. All humanity is one in front of God. He called him Adam, human being. He didn't say human beings. He said a human being. When God called the people in front of him when he was making his debut on this earth, he told Moses, tell Israel to come stand in front of me. He didn't say, tell the Israelites, just tell this big group out there, or tell these people that are Jacob's sons and somebody else's sons in the flesh to come stand in front of me. He called one unit, Israel. Now, you guys are discovering what it is to be part of that one unit with God. But until you, and me too, every Jew too, has to learn to do the steps and think the way God wants us to think, that truly completes the wedding together of us and God. It truly makes us one. God wants us lidabek elav. He wants us, the word dabek in Hebrew means if you want to glue something together, it's a lidbok, to glue together. You want to be that close, that tight. You and your husband, you and your spouse are supposed to be that way. You're supposed to be that way with God. You're supposed to be that way with humanity. We're all one unit. And whenever you get mad at somebody, it's like picking up a hammer, putting your thumb on the table and smacking your own thumb. Because it's a part of you that you're smacking. And it's also a part of God. So when you look at someone, and it doesn't make any difference color, it doesn't make any difference sex, it doesn't make any difference eye shape. Every single individual that walks this earth is in his image. Not everybody walks in the way that they give honor to that image. That's our choice. But no matter who they are and what they do, they're part of his image. And I'm going to say something now. Don't get upset, but it's true. The person can be homosexual. They can be transgender. They can be whatever they want. They can be calling themselves a cat, but they're still part of his image. They don't separate from his image. They're just defaming his image when they do things like that. He doesn't punish them per se like someone eating a ham sandwich and hits them with lightning. He doesn't take these people and do something bad to them or put sicknesses on them or give them premature death. So what is he saying? These people will live their lives right now the way they want. That's their choice. I gave them the free choice. This is only one part of our eternal life. What happens in the next step? And this is something very important that we're going to talk about in future meetings. What does it mean, Olam Haba, the next world, the next level of life, not death? Anybody have any questions you want to put in the chat room or something? Psalm 145, God is good to all his mercies are on all his creatures. That's exactly right. Everything he created, he has mercy on. But he also has, the other side of mercy is Gvorah. Gvorah is the laws that he puts out there. One last thought. Every single law of nature is exactly the same as the laws he gives us to live. Without it, you can't exist, including the law of gravity. See, people don't think about that, but that's part of nature and that's part of God's Gvorah. Without it, would we exist? No. If we take one law and make it disappear, we can't exist. And that's just the way it is. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be here next week at the same time. For those of you that want to make, are we going to meet on Sunday at the same time, 11 a.m. for those that just want to come in and have some chatting and stuff?
Hadn't thought about that since we were doing this tonight.
Notice that.
We can make. I'll make a decision between now and then. I didn't know if
Okay,
you were just switching it to just tonight or whatever.
That's fine. 2 weeks from tonight, Bezrat Hashem, with the help of God, when we're sitting here, my background's going to be a little different. Because the Monday of that week, I'm going to go in the hospital for a prostate operation. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday morning, I'll probably be doing it from the hospital bed. Hopefully not, but they told me I'll probably be in the hospital about a week. But we're still going to do it. I don't want to skip it. I'll have to find some place in the hospital where people won't be annoyed at 3 o'clock in the morning with me talking. I'm sure I can find a spot. So, but yeah, we're just going to keep on going right through. When is Father's Day in America?
I don't know. I have to look. I know it's not too far away.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just. I think it's in the next month. It's just. Isn't it around the 15th or something like that?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I just don't want to remind people whether you think of however you judge your father. God says honor him. He doesn't say love him. He doesn't say anything else. He says honor him, and remember, he gave you life.
Yep.
He started everything. Your mom did more than he did, but he started everything. So if you haven't talked to him in a while, just call up and say, hey, it's Father's Day. I'd like to say hello. Start a good angel going there somewhere.
There you go.
Guys, thank you. June 16th. There you go. Carla says it's Sunday, June 16th is Father's Day. So we would like everybody to view this on YouTube, like the channel, Torah for the Nations, be a part of B'nai Noach Connection with Israel on Facebook. We're trying to put together a group of people that are interested in just moving forward. Each one of us getting the Egypt out of ourselves, which is other religions or not wanting to pay attention to God, just overcoming our animal self. Because that's the goal we're here for. That's how we get to the next world, the next beautiful world that we're going to be on, the next level of life. Because God created us to be eternal beings, not this flesh. Flesh goes back to dust, but we go on. And we're just in kindergarten right now, guys. We're just learning the first steps. But once we get that down as best we can, and God doesn't say be perfect, he says make progress every day. The person that just starts walking this walk, and the person who's been doing it for 70 years, God looks at it as the same. He doesn't say, well, this guy's been doing it longer, so he's better. The minute you start walking the walk and taking the steps, God says, good on you. And the angels are singing your praises. And every day you make a little more progress and a little more progress. That's what God wants. Amen. Everybody be healthy, and we'll see you next week, same time, same place.